Singularity.
My name is Nicola, aka Socrates, and you're watching Singularity One-on-One. If you enjoy this show, you can help me make it better in several ways. You can, for example, go and leave a comment on YouTube. You can leave a review on iTunes, or you can simply make a donation. And as always, I will be the man with the questions. And today, the woman with the answers, my guest of the show, would be Liz Parrish. Liz Parrish is a founder and a CEO of BioViva, a company that aims to change the paradigm of aging and disease. Also, as it turns out, Liz is a fellow podcaster as well as the host of the BioThrove podcast, which is a podcast about the future of biotechnology and medical science. So, hi Liz, I'm so excited to have you on my show.
Hi, I'm excited to be here too. A couple of podcasters getting together. Can't be anything worse than that.
Fantastic. However, you're one of those podcasters who actually walks the walk and who goes to make real change in the world, not only through their podcast, if there's any such thing, but through the other actions and work that you do. So if I were to ask you to introduce yourself in a couple of words, how would you do that best?
Oh, geez, I don't know. In a couple of words, you really put me on the spot. Change oriented, educator, innovator. Maybe that's it. I think that as far as the podcasts go, this is really important work. Media is very important. This is how we get big ideas out to the general population. You know, we don't want to just speak to the choir, even though that's a fantastic thing to do. It's always great to have backing. We need to get a lot of information out to a lot of people. Then on the other side of the getting things done, that is integral. I think that is where I hold probably the biggest power there, is to make major change. So we have to make change, but we have to get information out while we do it so that people can accept that change. If people don't know in my case, what gene therapy is, what gene editing is in the future, if they're afraid of it, it will definitely hinder everything that I do. So all of this is really important, and it plays an important role in big change. Both of them work together.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and let me ask you this then. What is the major goal of your work? What's the best case scenario? What's the dream? What's the thing that makes you get up early in the morning and say, I'm going for it?
To end as much suffering that's attributed to disease as possible. That is definitely what gets me up. That's what keeps me up at night. I think that, the thought that, people are suffering right now, that people are dying right now is a huge push. I think that the idea and the knowledge that we're essentially all on that road, this actually affects every one of us. Right now with the age that you are and the age that I am, if we had our cells looked at closely, our body system looked at closely, it's quite possible we could already determine what we would be dying of in the hopefully far off future. We want to push that off as far as possible.
Mm-hmm. And what's the path towards realizing that dream, in your view? Alleviating suffering and postponing death for an indefinite period of time, or aging?
Well, the two words would be gene therapy. The one word would be do. It would be a verb. We just have to do it. And that's what our company is all about. It's about really changing how we do healthcare. It's changing how we motivate people to get involved now. It has a lot to do with pioneering spirits, about encouraging you to think about life a lot differently, encouraging people to take the risks now, whether that's financial risks or social risks, to get out there and say that this is what we should be doing, or maybe even for people in compassionate care scenario, taking the risks to try a therapy now that could reverse their disease and change the future for mankind.
Well, perhaps now is the moment to tell us a little bit about BioViva and sort of its mission and sort of its strategic approach to solving those problems in reality, in practice.
Right. So BioViva, we're a gene therapy company, and we do gene therapies for compassionate care and consensual use. We are targeting aging as a disease. So what that means is that we're actually looking at gene therapies that appear in research and in human tissue studies, some of them in human studies, to reverse systems of aging. Whether that be epigenetic changes, muscle mass changes, reversal of atherosclerotic plaques, cleaning up of DNA damage and misfolded proteins. So we're looking at gene therapies that have the most impact for everyone now.
Let me see if I can ask you something here, which I think is kind of relevant too. I watched another interview with you where you said that you are sometimes known as a fire starter and not everyone's favorite person.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how and if that may be relevant here?
Well, I think that that perception is actually changing quite quickly. It seems like people in the past who didn't really want to touch my ideas of that, we should work in humans now, that we need to give up on the animal models, and we need to find out what will happen in people today, because the animal models don't all translate. People are dying today of diseases who should have right to try use of experimental medicine, what's considered experimental medicine. I think that I have a real strong desire to change things from the very basis of how we think about medicine, including the fact that I think that we need to rethink what we think safety and efficacy is. And so that stirs a lot of debate and conversation. So for instance, gene therapy is considered experimental medicine, but everything that's ever passed through the FDA is still an experiment. And as a matter of fact, people are dying taking it. We're not seeing massive health span extension. As a matter of fact, the United States is only 5% of the population of the globe, of the whole earth. We take 75% of all the prescription drugs, and we have the shortest lifespan of every industrialized country. I have questions about that, and I think that we can do it better. I think we can do a better job at medicine, and I think that we need to move very quickly. And I don't think that everyone agrees with that, but more and more people are getting on board. More and more people who listen to me speak, who look into what we're doing, are coming on board. And these are people who in the past had been kind of quiet about their involvement with BioViva, and they now think that it is actually the way to go.
That's very interesting, Liz. So tell us how, for example, your personal choice to be a vegetarian also kind of enhances or goes kind of in support of or perhaps shows something about who you are and what you stand for.
Oh boy, you have done your research. Okay, so as far as being a vegetarian, how does that, I think that probably the interesting thing about being a vegetarian is kind of, sticking with your choices. That would probably what it would show in me. I definitely stick with my choices, and I understand how to do without. So, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with taking risks, and I'm okay with doing without for what I stand for. So I eat dinner with a lot of people who eat meat, and I don't ever say, oh, well, I got to have some of that, or maybe I'll take some of that. I stick by my choices, and I guess maybe there it shows a little bit of integrity. I don't think that it's something that I push off on anyone else. I don't push anyone to join me in that. And so I think that it also shows that, I'm compassionate to other people's needs and desires. And, I never go on the preaching mode of why you should do this too. I do it and see if it causes any reaction in the people around me, I guess. And usually it doesn't.
Well, the reason why I'm asking all those personal questions is because I think it's actually important to kind of pull the curtain a little bit on the person, not only the scientist, but also the person, on the sort of, and reveal the humanity, if you will, and the personal characteristics, the persona behind the work, which I personally find always very fascinating. So let me ask you this. Are you an ethical vegetarian, meaning you made that choice because you think that it is the ethically right choice to make? Or are you a health vegetarian, meaning that you just believe that being a vegetarian provides better health outcomes for you personally?
I'm actually both. I feel that it does create a better health outcome, but believing in gene therapy, maybe I would think that I could eradicate that from the equation. Uh, I think ethically, that's the reason probably why I stick with it the most. I think that it is a smart thing to do if you don't need it, if it has no health, you know, ill effects on your body. So, gosh, this is an interesting conversation because I don't think about this very much, and I was asked about this before. I think that as a society and as a world, we will move more and more towards this, but in fact, there are things like cultured meat that will probably take its place slowly. And I do believe in that. I might even try that in the future, and that's when they culture meat from stem cells. The amount of space on the earth that we use for farming and the way we treat animals is actually pretty poor. If we want to reach other uh, planets, if we want to expand, if we want to really learn how to be efficient, this isn't actually a very efficient way to eat. So I think that being a vegetarian by choice is both health and ethical, and it actually will have great implications for the future of mankind in how we treat the planet, what we do on the planet, how efficient we are, and cultured meat and things like that are a fantastic way to take protein substances to space.
Mm-hmm. Let me share with you honestly that this is perhaps one of my biggest flaws here because I personally agree with you, ethically speaking, on everything that you said. And I'm failing to follow through on that kind of ethical understanding with proper action. And the reason for that is that, from health point of view, from a selfish health point of view, I've talked to a lot of people here, both on my show and otherwise, who, have pretty much convinced me that vegetarianism and especially veganism is particularly dangerous for your health. And my wife was trying. I've done certain periods of time on vegetarianism, and my wife tried it for an extended period of time, and she had substantial health issues as a result. And of course, some people do better than others on it. So I am, I think, actually, in fact, in contrast to her, one of those who does a lot better than most people. And yet, first, for me, it's hard to kind of keep it consistent for, let's say, more than a couple of months. And two, the scientific evidence that I've been exposed to convinces me otherwise. Mm-hmm. So ethically speaking, I agree with you. From health point of view, I disagree. And I find this the biggest personal flaw in myself, that I'm unable to make the right choice, because usually I prefer to make the right choice. And that's the only situation pretty much that I can think of that I am really not living my message. And it really bugs me, to be honest.
Well, actually, I mean, I think that you have to do what actually makes you feel healthy and what helps you get things done in the world. So I think that if you feel like it's an unhealthy choice, then it's not for you. I certainly, from the point I was eating a lot of meat to the point where I'm a vegetarian, I have not seen any health detriment. I think that I actually have more energy, which is actually a little bit frightening. But that's for me, and it is quite possible that we all are a little bit different in our nutritional needs, and so you definitely want to optimize for what your body needs, and you know what that feels like more than I do. So I do occasionally take an iron pill, and I occasionally take vitamins, and that might make a difference, and that might be why I tolerate it so well. But I think that precision medicine is really going to help us with that. And it might be that for some people, a vegetarian diet is of benefit, and it might be for other persons that it's not. And it could come down to not just blood type and the things that we've heard before, but it might come down to how you metabolize your food and what you need from your food. And, maybe in the future we can change that metabolism. So what I'm saying is that I'm a proponent for these new types of meat. I think that those will be fantastic, and those will actually change a lot of the ethical issues in the future. And it'll also make us, you know, more advanced in our food and in our thinking. I think that synthetic food to me is I have a big excitement about that. I like the idea of shakes and getting all of your nutrition in one place. And I think that it not only helps us be sustainable, it helps us get to other planets. Like I said, it helps with space travel. And I think that we'll find that actually almost synthetically feeding ourselves will be more beneficial than a lot of the food sources we have now, because they will give us exactly what we need. So for every bite of food that you eat, there's a level of nutrition benefits and there's a level of toxicity. Some of those are similar, some go hand in hand, and some are separate. I think that in the future we'll want to be really efficient. We'll want to give ourselves exactly what they need so that we can get on with it. And sitting down to an heirloom dinner will be a special occasion. It'll be a wonderful thing. But I think that we'll look at a lot of these foods that we eat now and we'll think, oh, tomatoes, so toxic, artichokes, asparagus, so horrible for you. But for tonight, we'll sit down and eat those.
Well, that's a fascinating topic, but I don't want to hijack our conversation today. So perhaps we'll have another opportunity to discuss it one day in person.
Yeah.
In the meantime, let's get back here to the main topic here, which is BioViva. So, what do you offer or hope to offer to the world?
Okay, so we're going to start out with a couple of therapies. We're starting out with a myostatin inhibitor that we're very excited about. We're initially chasing it for sarcopenia. So sarcopenia is muscle wasting. It happens over time as you get older. It definitely enhances muscle mass. But we have some anecdotal data. It's very basic data that we're chasing that it might actually reverse atherosclerotic plaques. And if that was the case, we might be able to take a killer off of the chart, off of the graph that kills, over 1/3 of the population in industrialized countries. That would be fantastic. Okay. So that's one of the things that we've got. We think that people will be really interested in this. For sarcopenia, frailty kills about 6% of the population. That's actually a really low number compared to how many times we've heard so-and-so broke their hip and they died, so that's a sarcopenia type accident. We are very excited about this. We think that anyone over 40 could be a great candidate for this. And we want to get people out and get people active again. Get out running and hiking and doing all those things that people tend to put down as they get a little bit older. The second thing that we're going after, and this is a real big excitement, is we're going to bring in human use of telomerase induction in the cells. And so this is actually an epigenetic type gene therapy. This goes in and it should lengthen telomeres. It should turn off genes that turn on over time. A lot of people don't realize that as you get older, you often have more genes turned on than you did when you're younger, because we all feel like we're lacking something. But in fact, we've gained a bunch of proteins that we don't want. So we're excited about this. We're hoping that it's going to shore up the cell, make it act young and youthful like it does in vitro and in all the human tissue that it's been applied to. We want to chase our Alzheimer's with this, actually. So we've started to run a campaign to raise some money for Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's has no cure. This year, in 2015, it affects 5.3 million people. It's a devastating disease. The reason it's a great disease to work in is because people see the loss in their loved one over time. It affects the whole family. So we feel that for compassionate use, more people will step forward and say this is the right thing to do, because you have to convince people to spearhead new medicine and new ideas. And so we want to essentially inject directly to the brain and see if we can stimulate the microglia to clean up the beta amyloids, and also to stimulate the neurons. Even though they're non-dividing, there's evidence that neurons that have telomerase induction will actually start cleaning up some of the tau tangles. And so we want to see if in fact this will work. You know, this could potentially be a cure instead of just amelioration of the disease, waiting for people to die. So we're excited about those two therapies. We have a patent that may in fact work for diseases like ALS and Parkinson's. And we're really excited about this. And this was based on the work that our doctor did with stem cells. He was injecting stem cells to the brain with ALS patients, and he would see these great results. He would see patients who hadn't walked starting to stand up. He would see patients who hadn't spoken starting to speak. Of course, you know, the great benefits would only last for a short period of time, and actually they would come on much too quickly. He said, you know, this couldn't be neural growth, this couldn't be, you know, microglia reestablishing themselves, because it was happening really quickly. So he basically chased a paper trail on it of research and realized that probably it was something called H factor. And so now we have a gene therapy based around that. We would like to take that through research to see if it would work for things like Parkinson's and ALS. It would actually be a gene therapy that, instead of the stem cells signaling H factor, it would be a gene therapy that would allow the cells in the brain. So you can get different cells of your body to do different things. It's just creating proteins. So it would actually stimulate them to create the H factor. And what H factor does is it tells all the cells to start talking to each other. Start talking, start talking, start talking. And in that communication, you see whole systems start to redevelop, and communications between cells start to redevelop, and cells that are damaged start to repair their damage. And so we're hoping that this gene therapy would be of massive benefit, again, in a place where there is no cure. So we're really excited about these three therapies, the later one obviously still needing some research.
So you've got arteriosclerosis, ALS, Parkinson, and Alzheimer's.
Yeah, but for the Alzheimer's treatment, for telomerase induction, that gene therapy in itself, if we can prove it on Alzheimer's, we will move that to almost every disease state. We will try that same therapy because it works on the level of the aging cells. So, you don't get Alzheimer's when you're young. You start to get symptoms, signs of it. We can actually look in brains and start to see things now. They're finding it at the ages around the 20s. But in fact, you don't come down with it because it's an aging disease. And so that's why we see aging as a disease. If we start tackling what's happening and make those cells behave young, reverse the aging in those cells, you should be as likely to come down with Alzheimer's as you were when you were 15, mm-hmm. which is about 0%.
Yes, so I thought it's ambitious, or beyond ambitious even, when I listed the diseases that you're attempting to cure, basically, and now you're making it even an order of magnitude bigger. So how does one approach modest goals like these? What's kind of the thinking behind your strategy? What are the steps? What are the benchmarks? What are the things that you have to do to make it happen?
Okay, so what we have to do is, obviously funding is number one. You have to get money in. The reason that we chose the diseases that we chose is that these these gene therapies show strong evidence of reversing aging. Okay, so if we can do that, that's the way we can get on top of them. The reason that we chose the severe disease, like something like Alzheimer's, okay, is because, again, like I said, we need public support. We need support from the public that it is okay to go ahead and use these gene therapies, and maybe they wouldn't feel so confident using those in a healthy person. You know, with heart disease is a major killer, more than a third of the population. But the person with heart disease is having a conversation with you, knows who you are up until the point they have a heart attack and die on the couch. So, you know, those people might feel less confident, but when a family has someone with Alzheimer's, they know the loss almost immediately. By the time that you're actually diagnosed, you know, up to 40% of your neurons are damaged in your brain. You know, there is very little hope right now. And hope to me is a 4-letter word. I don't like the word hope very much, but what we want to do is see if what we have right now with technology that has 16 years of research on it, move forward for people who have no other choice now and see if in fact we can reverse their diseases and save their lives.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about your fundraiser, please.
Okay, so Max Life Foundation actually is running a fundraiser for BioViva, and they're giving 100% of everything earned to BioViva. So we're really excited about that. And it's just for Alzheimer's. So the idea is to raise $250,000 to treat 3 Alzheimer's patients with this gene therapy and see if we can get results.
What if someone says, well, $250,000 for 3 Alzheimer patients, but then what?
Well, actually, one Alzheimer's patient. If we could take one Alzheimer's patient and get the results that they had in mouse studies where old mice's brains redeveloped, and if we could reverse Alzheimer's in just one patient, we would be sitting on a real advancement.
A revolutionary treatment.
Oh yeah, N equals 1 is where actually precision medicine is going. You know, trying to force a bunch of people through clinical trials, thousands of people. You know, when one drug cures 100% of a small subset, but none of the other people, and then the drugs don't get passed. That's the wrong way to do it. As we learn more and more about the genome, we're going to change that. Mm-hmm. But an N equals 1 study, even with Alzheimer's patients, telomerase induction, and reversing that disease would be worth 1 billion mice studies. You know, we have to stop putting our mind into animal models that don't translate perfectly. We have people who are dying now. This is really the right thing to do. We need a mandate. And that's what I'm trying to tell you is through social acceptance, through the acceptance of the community, we need a mandate that people have the right to try these therapies now.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about how we can go to contribute perhaps to that fundraising campaign, and how far are you from your goal?
Okay, so that actually just started. I believe that it just went live yesterday. I know that we've had donations, but I don't know because actually BioViva will actually have to apply to get that money with a grant for actually the transferal of funds from Max Life, and they'll tell us when they're ready for us to submit that. We have to, we already have the protocol and all of the things that we need in line on our side. So that is just started. I can't remember. Oh, you can go to biovivasciences.com, and that's where you'll want to go to get the link to the Max Life website. It will actually take you directly to the fundraiser instead of just going to their main page and having to find it.
Yeah, I'll post the link myself in the show notes. Let me ask you to sort of pull back a little bit and zoom out and look at the sort of the big picture of aging, if we can. And let's perhaps start by definition. What is aging? How do we define it? Because you see, After interviewing 170 people about the singularity, one of the first things that I've noticed is that everyone is talking about a little bit different flavor, and sometimes very big different flavor, about the thing we're discussing. So I want to make sure we start out by laying the foundation. What is aging, and how do we define it?
Aging is cellular degeneration over time. And so biological aging obviously is what we're going after. We're not going after chronological aging. We can make that really clear. We want you to get really old in numbers, but not cellularly. So it's cellular degeneration over time. It's DNA damage, it's misfolded protein accumulation, it's depletion of stem cells, or actually the miscommunication between the stem cells and the rest of the body. Often we die with a lot of very good robust stem cells, but there's just no communication between the niches anymore. It's a lot of things. The DNA damage can come down to damage that happens, from radiation, the sun, to damage that just comes with replication errors. So we see, problems in cell signaling. We see telomere loss. We see many of these things. So I think that our definition of biological aging is very similar to other people's definition of them. It's just how to solve it. And I don't think that many people argue with the techniques that we would use to move forward to try to solve this problem. We can't say that any one of these therapies will do everything that we need to be done. We can't say that that one gene therapy will shore up every issue, but we have an indication that one or two, maybe three or four, may in fact do a lot of benefit and get us to the point where we have enough research to take the next steps. And it may be possible, because everyone's genome's a little bit different, that lengthening your telomeres and turning off genes will be fantastic for everyone. But if you've got a person that makes a specific protein, they might be more susceptible to another jab at aging that we have to get under control. But we definitely think that starting now is the time to start. We start now and we find out what we've got. Maybe we're sitting on everything we need and maybe we're not, but there's no time like the present. We can't wait another 20 years to do this for sure.
You're very action oriented, and I love that. But let me give you the sort of the classic skeptic / critic approach, which is to say the proper realm of medicine is to treat disease or medical conditions. Curing aging and defeating death is snake oil. It's been attempted since, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and it's snake oil. We can't do it. We haven't done it. We don't know how to do it, and we probably shouldn't do it because it's not normal. It's natural for us to age, whether you take sort of the evolutionary approach and you say that's how we evolved to be by nature, by sort of evolutionary design, or by sort of the grand design of the Almighty God, who created us to be mortal, and therefore we ought to remain so.
Okay. Well, I have actually a lot of answers for that. And I'll go back. I'm actually going to take them in reverse to your last statements, hopefully to your first ones, and let me know if I'm missing anything here. One of my teachers, one of actually my chemistry teachers, was so fantastic. And he, when a lot of people had lost their faith in anything, in science and everything like that, he had said, there is actually no more evidence on earth than science of God. He said that a man working his entire life to achieve one increment in something that he can't see the bigger picture of is the biggest sign of God. And I thought that this was really interesting because everyone in the classroom was like, what? And he pointed out how many people have died along the road to creating great things, and they knew that they were just an increment in something bigger. And it's almost like ants, like we're building something and we're working towards something. So then let me go back to the other statement. That doesn't define what I think or how I believe. by the way. So then let's go back to the other statement of what is normal. We've been changing what is normal over time for hundreds of years now. So when people say, well, it's normal to die of aging, it's normal to die of old age, actually, I have a whole presentation for that. It's not normal to die of aging. Actually, what's normal is to die before the age of 30 of infectious disease. And that's how humans died up until, a couple hundred years ago. Across the board, very few people lived to old age. That was actually considered abnormal. So the normal way to die for humans is of infectious disease before 30. What has knocked that off the board is medicine, immunizations and antibiotics, workplace safety and sanitation. Those things changed the game for everyone. Okay, that's why we live as long as we do now. That's why we think this is normal. But this is actually recent, very, very recent history. This wasn't your great great grandmother's history. This is your, maybe your great grandmother's history, depending on how close together your family had children, and definitely your grandmother's history. But this is all new thinking. We're just taking it one step further. We're saying that the path is, the human path is to solve the next problem. And so we're solving that problem. So with BioViva, I know that everyone does get excited about infinite lifespans. And obviously, of all the people I've talked to very religious people and people who are not. And everybody loves what we do. They like the idea of eradicating disease. They like the idea of living longer. I've never had a religious person actually say, well, I think that that's against God. When they look at things like gene therapy and things like that, they might have a initial hesitation, but then they're like, oh no, that is what we want. We want to eradicate disease. I mean, what did Jesus do? Jesus went around, curing people from disease and being a general good guy. Now, definitely he got crucified for that. And we don't want to get crucified for that. But he got some pretty bad treatment for doing some pretty great things, I guess. I have no knowledge of the Bible, by the way. I was not raised religious. So I have very little understanding, but this has been a debate and it has been a topic of interest. And I have specifically taken my argument or what I would like to do to religious people to see how that bounces off of them. So I would say that we've already changed what's normal for humans, that we're on the road to changing it some more. I think that curing aging as a disease is something that is an obvious next step. Science sees the next roadblock, and we're going to do that. With BioViva, we don't talk a lot about expanding lifespan beyond 120 years. We talk about living youthfully and productively in society, being part of the economy, being part of the great development, and not being part of this massive debt that is created through health problems. So there's a lot of benefits to living healthy, youthfully as possible, as long as possible. So we just talk about, skidding you in on that 120 years, looking like you did when you're 20, feeling like you did when you're 20, if we can do it. That's our target. Because if you don't look young, aging isn't just an outside thing. It's not just a thing where, you get gray hair, you lose your hair, you get wrinkles. Those are just the outward signs. What's happening inside your body is just as devastating, if not more. As a matter of fact, I've got a great slide of a 27-year-old brain that's been imaged and an 87-year-old brain that's been imaged. And if you look at the 87-year-old brain compared to this 27-year-old, the amount of damage and atrophy in that brain is so much worse than the outward symptoms that person has in their skin. And yet this 87-year-old patient in this slide didn't even have dementia. So people need to realize that this is like going on internally, and those are the things that are going to kill you. Right? Like, if people talk about, external youth, it seems really actually very shallow, because cosmetics have been that way up until now. Okay. If you have more youthful looking skin, or, you've had a nip and a tuck and you've never really taken care of the internal issues. With these new therapies, we're actually going to be running a in vivo skin test with telomerase induction. With these new therapies, looking youthful on the outside is going to be a reflection of how you look on the inside. And those are Those are the important parts of staying youthful, healthy as long as possible. So we can talk about indefinite lifespans because that's really exciting. You know, of all the people I talk to, you know, I can never pin on them when they want to die. You know, even the most religious people, it's like, well, you know, would you like to die tomorrow? Would you like to die when you're 87? When you're 87, at that point, will you be able to sit with me and say, yes, I'm ready to die? I mean, there are very few people who are ready to die besides the clinically depressed, right? Like people just, they have this robustness. My grandma, Lila, I remember I lived with her for over a year, and I loved living with my grandma. But one of the things that I always remembered, I could never forget it, and I was a really young kid. I was 10 or 11. She looked in the mirror and she said, "I just don't recognize this person." You know, like you always feel like you, but how everything it's like it's like you're deteriorating around who you are, but you don't feel any different. And those were the outward looks. The things that were happening to her internally were just as devastating, if not more so. And she did actually die from Alzheimer's.
Wow. So I bet that plays part of the motivation why you're so passionate about this.
It is one of the motivations. Actually, I got into this to cure childhood disease. I didn't actually get into the science to be in the longevity realm. I ended up going to a SENS conference in UK at Cambridge.
Aubrey de Grey's conference?
Yes. And I remember I emailed them a lot and saying, why would I be going to this? I was into the genetic aspects of what they were doing, but a couple of the people who were involved, and even Aubrey himself, emailed me back and said, come and check it out. I think that you'll like it. And so I think I bought the ticket just a few days before, and I got a plane ticket about 2 days before, which I never want to do again because I paid heartily for coach. Which is what I fly. I'm into saving money, but the thing is I really probably paid a first class ticket price. So, but I went and I sat there and I listened and I thought, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to cure kids by, fighting the first old man's war. We've got all of these people who are dying of disease, and we can find out now if what we've got will work. And at that point, it was looking a little sketchy, a little unknown about what would happen with the body if we did these things. I know that was just a couple years ago. Here's how fast things are moving. I sat down with some experts during that conference, and they said, Liz, because I said, well, how long could we live? They said, well, you can only push it off so far because actually we know everyone will go blind. We know everyone will go blind. 1 year, the next SENS conference, people at Berkeley and other persons were actually talking about their gene therapies that reverse macular degeneration. That actually, it's just so fast. We're getting a heads up on that. We don't have to go blind now.
Absolutely.
We've got a gene therapy for that, and we're just going to knock them off, one after the other, just like that. But we got to do it now. We got to do it in people. We've got so many people in need. It's the right thing to do.
That's fantastic. I love how passionate you are about this, and I absolutely wish you success in everything that you do. But I do think that people like you do end up make a difference. So just keep at it. Now, for people like us or like me, who are ignorant of the details surrounding gene therapy. Can you please tell us a little bit more about how gene therapies, what gene therapy is to begin with, and how does it work?
Oh, yeah. It's very elegant. You're going to love gene therapy. So I've talked to many people who are into holistic medicine, people who are into, pharmaceuticals, people who are into massive interventions and no interventions, and everybody loves gene therapy. So it's what we do is we listen to what your cell needs. Okay. We listen to the genome in a sense, and we listen to what you need. We have very little information now. We'll have more information in the future.
How do you listen? With the genetic testing?
What you can do, yeah. So for monogenic disease, those patients would have genetic testing. Often they're missing a gene or they have a bad gene. Okay, and you listen for the player in the sense. So think of it as an orchestra. You listen for the player and you hear the bad player. Okay, right now with gene therapy, what we do with gene therapy is we take, in our case, we take a viral vector. This cannot get you sick. It's not something that infects humans. It does work in these cases. We take out its ability to replicate, so it could never go on to make more of itself. And we cut out the area where it would deliver its payload to a cell. So what think about it as like a space pod, okay? And then there's the International Space Station, and that's your cell. Here's the International Space Station. And then the space pod is the viral vector, and it hooks on, okay? There's ligands and receptors, and it hooks on, and it delivers the payload, okay? And the payload, in our case now, is our human gene. So we have our target transgene. We insert it into the virus. The virus attaches to the cell. It puts that gene right into the cell, okay? And then that cell starts coding for a protein, okay? And so now if you have a monogenic disease, you've got one gene that's bad, we've replaced that in a sense. We've put in a good player, and that good player is now making the protein that you need. And this works for adrenoleukodystrophy, that's ALD, children with that. It works for other symptoms too. I just put a great video on the Facebook about a muscle atrophy disease that infants get, and they die within a year. And this works. It really works.
I saw that one. It was about spinal degeneration, right?
Yeah, it is. And so essentially what your cell is the place where you hold your chromosomes. Your chromosomes code for the proteins that make everything about you. They make those cells. They make what you look like. They make how you feel. They make how much muscle you have and everything else. We upregulate a protein. So that's what gene therapy is. It's the insertion of a gene to upregulate a protein that you need. Now, in the future, we'll be doing genetic engineering and genomic engineering, which will be a lot different. We'll be editing genes out, putting in good sections of genes, maybe adding things that we didn't have before. Instead of listening for one bad player, we'll be listening to the whole symphony and try to figure out why that player is a bad player. Maybe it's being repressed by another gene. We'll be able to play with it by taking, and changing out the orchestra. Right now what we do is we just put one gene in at a time. It's limited, but it's actually very powerful.
So let me ask you this. I've talked to a number of experts in the field for the last maybe 4 or 5 years. And so you have people such as Dr. Michael Fossel or Bill Andrews, who are big proponents of telomerase therapy. Mm-hmm. You have Aubrey, who is like sort of going along what he called the 7 deadly sins of the cell and sense. Then actually a few weeks ago, I met Dr. Barry Merriman, who is from Human Longevity Inc., the company that was started by Craig Venter and Peter Diamandis. And he is big on stem cell therapy. Also, so what's the path in your view that's the most promising, and why?
Well, obviously, I mean, the modality I think is gene therapy. It's the most promising because it's a permanent fix to a situation where we have genes that all of us can benefit from initially. I think that stem cell use is limited. I think that stem cells are great for building organs. I think that they're great for giving the system a bit of a bump up. But I think that genomics and gene therapy is just going to be the biggest power. Now, the ex vivo work with stem cells and gene therapy is fantastic. I think that we're going to really change our thinking. Everything's going to go into the path of gene therapy in the future. I've met a lot of people who are huge proponents of stem cell work. They use stem cells for anti-aging and various other things, but none of them look much younger. And I think that that is because there's something happening at the genomic level, obviously, and those are the areas that we need to solve the problem. So if you just use your own stem cells to boost up your system, you will have some regenerative effects. A lot of the stem cells that you use will actually leave the area, and it's the signaling that gets back to our patented gene therapy. It's the signaling that has the most benefit. But you're basically restocking your system with your own genome that has the same damages and the same outcome as it does now. The great thing with genomics is we can just change that. We can change the genes, the proteins that you're creating to make you more healthy, stronger, faster, smarter, whatever it is. We'll figure it out.
Perhaps now is the time for you to tell us a little bit more about your South American testing facility. Where is it and what kind of work do you do there?
Okay, so we have a clinic in Bogota, Colombia, and predominantly it has been used to treat patients with cancer, although most of those patients are treated in the U.S. now. So our doctor who owns that clinic is a radiologist and does oncology. He was actually working down there for a while because some of the drugs that they were using for cancer immunotherapy were being passed through the FDA, but they weren't quite passed yet, and people were seeking cures for their cancer. They are now passed, and so he's able to do a vast majority of that work in the U.S. Where we're more likely to work with patients is we're getting collaborative efforts with clinics in Bahamas and Mexico right now, but we can definitely work in Colombia. And actually, Bogota, Colombia is quite fantastic. My doctor actually came to San Francisco last January. We were asked to meet with Pfizer, and so we came and met with them. And, we were walking around some of the streets in San Francisco, and he said, boy, I spend, part of my time in Bogota, Colombia, and this is actually scarier. As
Really?
parts of San Francisco have gotten, the homeless situation is has really burgeoned. We really need to do something about that. We need to step up the humanity and get these people who are mentally ill off of the street and get them into a safer conditions. Yeah, so, he said that he actually felt less safe in San Francisco than he does in Bogota. And I've been there. I've been to Bogota, and I would agree. There were some areas that we walked through that were actually quite unsavory, but we were safe. Nobody did anything.
But let me ask you this here about the humanity, or another word for it that I like very much is ethics. So tell me a little bit about the ethics in genetics.
Oh, I think that it just holds such a key to strong ethic of cures and the power to eradicate so much suffering. And it's not a new technology. A lot of the research has been around for 16, 17 years and more for some of the therapies. I think that this is a big game changer. This is where we can create a healthier, more robust population, at the very cellular level and do it with an injection, So, one thing that we're excited about is if our myostatin inhibitor reverses atherosclerotic plaques, we'll essentially be taking away the prospect of open heart surgery, which is an absolutely barbaric procedure. Take away, stents that build up more plaques on them. We, with an injection, will be treating the future. It reminded me a little bit when I started getting involved with it of, what was it, Star Trek, and they walk out and they see somebody on the wall of this community of this planet who is not evolved in medicine, and they say, "What's wrong with this patient?" "Oh, she has diabetes and she's dying," and he's like, "We cured that a long time ago," and they just kind of they phase her over her, and she's like, "Fine." We are not to that state, but that's where we're headed, is into a place where we're affecting the cells at the cellular level and eradicating a lot of the suffering that's going on right now. And anything that holds this science back is absolutely unethical. Like I said, you can take all of the drugs that have been passed through the FDA, and they're still an experiment. There are more people that die in 1 year of adverse drug effects, ADEs, than probably will die in gene therapy over the next 30, 40 years. We've got the viral vectors to the point of non-immunogenicity. So people are not having the immune effect that they did that essentially shut down the industry in the 90s. We will be, if we're smart, and we're very careful about the genes that we're applying, we shouldn't see toxic effects down the road. You can't do a gene therapy on every gene. I think that that's really important that people understand that. There are some things that very few cells take over. And so if we gave you a gene therapy for something like that had to do with a hormone, and then all of those cells divided, then you have twice the hormone. That would be a really bad idea. So we have to be careful with it. And as long as we're careful and we follow the research, I think that we're going to have a massive amount of success, and we can create a better ethical management of disease and hopefully cures for disease than we have now.
Fantastic. So now is the time to tell us about the next step, which is also quite radical, because it's one thing to talk about curing therapies that would cure certain kinds of disease or conditions or even aging. It's another thing to talk about human rights to use those therapies, which you do on your website. So tell me a little bit about that, and because to me as a Canadian, that strikes me as very different approach than the kind of traditional approach that we see coming from America. Why is that? Is that the case? And why is it that the sort of the policy or the trajectory that you want to take on?
Well, I think that human rights are a huge issue here. I think that, the right to try, the right to use experimental therapies for yourself, regardless of the situation you're in, but especially if you're terminally ill. Right now in the United States, in some states, you do have right to try access, but it's only for drugs that have gotten to a certain level of safety and efficacy. And then you have to get a drug manufacturer to actually make them. And, doing all of this while you're dying of a disease is actually quite difficult. And it's why a lot of people die without the right to try or the right to use. And a lot of people have actually died in this country. That then their families have gone on to be behind legislation that helps other families while they're waiting for access to these medicines. I want people to learn more about biology. I want them to learn more about their bodies. And I want them to really take control of that and to tell the powers that be that they should have the right to do with their body as they see fit. We want people to be safe. The FDA has a really important job of making sure that uninformed people don't take therapies that may, in fact, kill them or be unhealthy or have things like antifreeze in them, which is essentially how they got started. But we want them to be informed all the way around, and not just because one company could afford to get through a matter of testing. The money and safety and efficacy should not go hand in hand. I've had this conversation with many people. They say, well, it's expensive and it costs this much to get through the FDA. And I'm not sure why costs and safety and efficacy are part of one conversation. I think they should be part of two very different conversations. I think that we need to lower the costs. We need to somehow come up with almost a socialized approach to getting people through these testings of these great therapies. A lot of the reason that these therapies get blocked is because companies don't access them because they're so simple. So a lot of the viral vectors have already been patented, okay? So if you can't patent the viral vector and you can't patent the gene, businesses think that they've then got no reason to move forward with a therapy. Well, if we don't hold the patent for it, if we can't license this technology,
anyone can knock it off.
Then anyone can knock it off. But therein lies the cures. If the cure lies in an unpatentable gene that anyone can apply, you still go forward. You go forward even faster. That means that more people can benefit from it. It shouldn't be a money game on either side. There's plenty of money in it.
And what about the people who would say, well, you need the money game in order to spur innovation?
That's because of the cost of innovation right now is so much. If we can bring down the cost of innovating, then you won't need all of that money. And there is good money. There is good money in treatment. Look at all of these anti-aging clinics offshore that really offer very little more than human growth hormone and a nip and a tuck and an exfoliation. They bring in millions of dollars. You want to be the person who owns the gene therapy company that does that? I do. Even if I'm 1 in a billion and we're saving lives, that every one of those clinics is going to make plenty of money. You know, a plenty of money to live a nice lifestyle and be doing the right thing in the meantime. That's where it's at. You know, we have to think about where we want to go as a person, as a people. You know, you want to be the first person to it. You don't want to be the last person to it. You know, it's a question of ethics all the way around the conversation.
I agree very much with you, Liz. That's why my blog, people often confuse that my blog is about technology, but actually technology is just a context. It's a blog about ethics. Let me ask you this other question, which is a little bit different, but we're running out of time a little bit, and I want to cover a few other things here before we finish. Tell us a little bit more about your desire for BioViva to be a platform for small biotech.
Right. So we have to go out. We've got to prove ourselves first. That's a projected thinking. If we can go out and we can learn how to offshore, cut the costs, do everything at an FDA standard. So we'll bring in specialists so that we have all the paperwork, all the trail that we need to prove what we're doing, an IRB to prove human safety. If we can do all of this and create the platform, then yes, that goes perfectly from the last question and the last answer. We want to help other small biotechs do the same thing off of our platform. They can come to us if they've got something that has, you know, a lot of research behind it and has massive benefits to the population. We would love to help them do the same thing. You know, we would like all of these companies with great technology, whether it's patented or not, have the ability to come back and get breakthrough status in the U.S. and get these treatments, drugs, therapies to people.
Fantastic. So what is the perhaps one thing, if some annoying podcast host like myself were to force you to pick the one most exciting thing that you can choose right now from the whole field, what would that be?
I think that right now, even though I'm really excited about our myostatin inhibitor potentially reversing atherosclerotic plaques, because I think that's as equally as important, because we have no indication that telomerase induction would reverse atherosclerotic plaques for certain. I would still have to say the telomerase induction in vivo in a human. That would be the most exciting thing, because in mice and in every human tissue, it reverses aging. Okay. Again, the brain sizes enlarge to natural sizes. Fur color goes from gray to brown. cognitive ability alongside the re-energizing of the brain seems to pick back up. I would say that that's the most exciting, and what's really makes it even more exciting is that people stand on one side of the fence or the other. The old school of thought that telomerase causes cancer, and the what science actually is pointing at now that in fact it doesn't, that it will protect you from cancer. I think that these are the things. This is the big therapy that everyone will be looking at. Getting more muscle and protecting yourself from heart disease is equally as important. I think that the two therapies will go hand in hand, and that will be probably our big breakthrough, is to do more than one gene therapy on a person and see if in fact we can mitigate a lot of these things. So again, I'm tooting my own horn. I think that we have tried to accumulate the most exciting therapies with the most research behind them, and finding out what happens in a person is going to be the thing in the next 18 months that hopefully is going to knock the socks off of the world.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what's the kind of the timeline on that sort of in vivo testing in a human subject or in humans basically.
Okay. Well, I can't say too much about that right at the moment, but I would say in 6 to 8 months we can do another podcast.
Okay, very good, very good. So let's hope that when the big news, if the big news breaks out, you still have time for me.
Yeah, and if this one doesn't turn out to be the big shebang like we hoped, then we're just going to go back to, I guess, we've still got the myostatin inhibitor, and then what we have to do is this one is just figure out how to make it work better. But we're really excited about this.
Liz, I had Jack and Drake a few weeks ago on my show. Are you familiar with him? He's this 15-year-old kid that came out with this kind of unique pancreatic test cancer.
Oh, I do remember hearing about him. Oh, that's fantastic. What a bright fellow.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, but you're probably not familiar with his research, because there are some skeptics about his work. The jury is out on his kind of breakthrough on cancer test. And one of the skeptics is actually Dr. George Church, who, of course, is one of your advisors for BioViva. So I wanted to see if you were familiar with his work by any chance, and if you could give us your take on it. But
I am not familiar with it. I am not familiar with it.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay, so I think we've spent well over an hour talking, and we unfortunately will have to bring our conversation to an end. Even though I have to admit I'm having a total blast here, and I'm learning a lot as we go, so it's hard for me to call it a day. But let me ask you, if you were to rate your own chances of success within, let's say, a 5-year period, let's not say 6 to 8 months, let's say 5 years to be generous, what is the sort of the number that you would assign to your potentiality of success on any of those conditions that you've mentioned, let alone all of them? But I think even one of them will be totally revolutionary.
Okay, so if I rated my success, I would have a really hard time pinning it down to one thing.
Probability of success.
Success to me will be actually getting these therapeutics to the world. I think that we will have a very high potential for success in Alzheimer's, especially the earlier we catch it. And I think that what we're going to find with gene therapy is that preventative medicine through gene therapy will be point one. We're going to want to get to patients before the damage incurs, but in order to get the public mandate, we have to work in very sick patients, and then we have to work back from there. Okay? We are working with companies who have molecules that they claim, and in their testing, do regrow neurons. Neurons are non-dividing cells, and so even if we reversed Alzheimer's in a patient that was pretty late on, we would need to come up with ways to regrow neural cells. Now, actually, they may do incredibly well with what they have, as long as the damage has been mitigated and the cell signaling starts back up. I don't know if you just saw it, but this week there was a guy's story that went around Facebook who essentially doesn't have a brain.
Absolutely,
is what, yeah, and he just
I
has
saw
all
it.
of that neural growth sort of like around his skull, which, and he's a math major and various other things, normal intelligence, and so we may not need to redevelop the whole brain, but of course we'll want to, and we know that in there in lies the damage. I think that, again, our successes will be working in late stage patients and then working back earlier and earlier in people, and then getting them therapies, therapeutics, gene therapies that work before they're diagnosed. But by traditionally diagnosed, people will be diagnosed younger and younger, okay? So that's where we'll hit our biggest targets, but we may have a massive amount of success in these later stages, and what we need to do is we need to find out. And so I'm not very good at running numbers there. With sarcopenia, with our myostatin inhibitor, I think we're going to have massive success. We're seeing success there. Our same gene therapy is in actual phase 3 clinical trials with Nationwide Children's Hospital for a different indication. It's in there for Becker's muscular dystrophy. So safety and efficacy has been proven on that, and I think that moving forward with that for sarcopenia right now is a mandate. We feel really confident with that. The chances of reversing atherosclerotic plaques in every patient, I would say we're going to be in really high percentages of success if our anecdotal data is correct, but we have to flesh that out. So I'm not real good about giving numbers here, but I think that we're going to be successful across the board, and I think that gene therapy and BioViva are going to be a huge success. So I would be conservative there. Targeting aging in general, I think we're going to have a great success. But we won't know if we can hit every indication, every pathway of aging until we start, and so we have to get onto that as well. So my level of success is something that is, even if we're massively successful in a few human bodies right now, my level of success is held by the gatekeepers of how these things come to the public, and so that all lies in the balance of public consensus and what the public demands for themselves, and how fast we can get that going.
Well, I do wish you the very best on your sort of very important mission. And I can see that you're totally committed to it, so I applaud you for that. Let me ask you, before we get to the last two questions, is there sort of a misconception that's really popular out there about your work and what you do that really bugs you and that you want to kind of clear out once and for all?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that, I don't watch very many movies or TV, but I do see things that come through, this sort of venues of like, gene therapy is going to create, make you have black blood and start eating your neighbors or something, and AI is going to create this world where, whole cities will be blowing up from massive power surges that, aren't even possible. But so I think that the biggest thing about gene therapy is that it's not a monstrous science. It doesn't create black blood and make you start eating your neighbors. As a matter of fact, our biggest challenge to get over is actually targeting enough cells to make changes. Okay, we have to actually put a lot of viral vectors in, a lot of delivery to get an effect. Okay,
so BioViva is not the umbrella corporation, and we're not going to see the zombie apocalypse.
You are not going to see the zombie apocalypse from us. No, that I think that people need to know that it has a lot of safety behind it. We're building on that. It's not a scary, monstrous thing. You're not going to grow fangs and have the desire for blood.
And what's the best place for people to find more about you and your work?
Oh, the best place to go to is biovivasciences.com. Another place you can go is you can go to the NIH, clinicaltrials.gov, and learn about the other gene therapies that are going on right now that are going through U.S. clinical trials. Hundreds of people are going through gene therapy trials. And, like the video I shared, infants are going through it. So, before you put a label of GMO on people, look at some of the patients that are actually getting these treatments. Realize that, these patients need help now. Realize that aging is not a normal thing, that it's something that we can tackle, biological aging, and that, in fact, you may be working towards being in just as great of need as that infant or the child with muscular dystrophy, or the person with a rare blood disorder. Think about things differently. Open up your mind to the possibilities. Realize that hundreds of people right now are going through gene therapies and having great success. And look into the future of what gene therapy might hold for you.
Fantastic. And if I'm to give you even another opportunity to give us sort of the final message or the most important thing that you'd like us to take away from this very long and I think illuminating and enlightening conversation with you, what would you like that to be?
I would like everyone to think of their future in a really different way. I'd like you to think of your life as being more unlimited. I'd like you to think of what you would like to do for work for the second half of your life. I would like you to think of how you can help expedite these sciences, whether you can get financially involved, whether you can share our information on Facebook and social media sites, whether you can tell your legislator that you're looking into gene therapy and that you want a mandate for people to be able to use that, whether you want to look at the human right aspect of your ability to do with your body as you see fit, if you want to look into diseases and start reaching out to communities, asking hospitals, research hospitals, if they're offering things like gene therapy, really start pushing towards this because it affects you. It actually affects everyone. That is the most interesting thing about the platform of aging. There's no one who runs outside of that. If you think that you're healthy for your age, I think that that's fantastic. But look at some of our slides of what healthy for your age is for an 87-year-old compared to a 27-year-old. If your doctor gives you a clean bill of health, that actually that means for your age. And what we want to do is we want to take that back and get you climbing mountains and running around. And we don't want your care in the future to look like palliative care. We want it to look like care for yourself.
That sounds like a fantastic vision and a great place to stop our conversation for today. But I will try and get in touch with you 6 or 8 months later and see if we have any news. So Liz Parrish, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. What a great time.
Singularity.